Let's continue in the Lucid Word. The author says, the person who cannot physically find water, i.e., they searched for water, yani, he searched for water, or one searched for water and did not find it, neither within his belongings, nor, yani, nor with the company traveling with him, or nor with his traveling company, for example. In the distance one is required to go while searching for it. Okay. Or another case, but let's stop real quick. Bismillah. So it's clear for you here that now we want to talk about tayammum. Going to make tayammum for one of two reasons. Either because you can't find water or because you can't use it. Either because you can't find it or because you can't use it. So he started with the first one. He couldn't find it. And then he went to talk about the second one, or yani, he couldn't use it for purification. So here, we need to unpack the first one. He said the person who cannot physically find water in his presence, yani, i.e., he searched for water. He searched for it because you can't say he didn't find it if he didn't look for it. So he looked for it. That's a condition. And he didn't find it. Neither in his belongings, so that's where he has to look, nor with his company, and he can ask all of them at once. He doesn't have to ask them one by one. Nor in the distance required to look when searching for the water. What's this distance? So there's details here. Let's not go far into details, inshallah, but take an idea. There's basically 3 levels. So the first level is as far as one can still call out for help. So that's a distance. It has its rules. The next level is a distance that people go for their needs normally. That's further. That has its own rules. And then there's, in this case, a distance even beyond that where the person knows there's water. So that one there, that last one, he doesn't have to go there. That's too far. Even if he knew he could get there before the time goes out. That's further than the people go for their normal needs. Normal needs like to take your sheep to go eat the grass to some field, for example, or to go get some firewood. So it's further than that. You don't have to go there, even if you knew you could get there before the time goes out. What about this second level here? This one where people normally go for their needs. You have to go there. If you know there's water there, you have to go there. Not if you don't know. If you don't know there's water that far as where people normally go for their needs, you don't know there's water that far, then you don't have to go there. So how about as far as you can call out for help? Do you have to go that far? If you think maybe there's water possibly, then you do. Unless it's enough for you just to look around. So that's clear, inshallah. Let me say them again for you. The other way. So here, this person cannot physically find water. He looked in his own luggage. Then he asked his company. So then he looked in his surroundings all around him. Now, if there's nothing to obstruct his vision, then that's good enough. All 4 directions. But if there's things to obstruct his vision, like bushes and trees and hills, then he needs to go into the four directions looking. Unless he can climb and then look around. If he can climb a tree and look around, that's good enough. So if he can't do that, he can't climb and look around, and there's things that obstruct vision, then he needs to go into the four directions looking. So there's two questions here. How far does he have to go? And why does he have to go? You might say he needs to. Why? The answer is easy, because he has to get some water. There's a very specific answer you need to understand so you understand all this right. And other things too. Why he has to go? Because he thinks there might be water. Because for him, it's possible that there's water. He has a van, a thought of a possibility. That's why. That's the reason why. It's not exactly the first thing I just said. The first thing I said was someone might say, because he has to get water. That's why. So that's not the answer. If you ask me, I'm not going to say he's going to go because he has to get water. The answer I'm going to give you is he has to go because he thinks there might be water. That's the answer. That's how you understand the other two levels too, the other two distances. As long as he thinks there might be water, he has to look every time for every prayer until he doesn't believe there's any water wherever he might be, whether that happened the first time or after 3 times or 4 times or 2 times, then he stops looking. Because he can always say to himself, I might have missed it. I'm going to look again. He looks where there's bushes, for example. He looks to see if there's birds somewhere. So that's why he has to go. And how far he has to go, as far as his company can hear him, call out for help, even with their being busy with pitching tents and cooking pots. So now the next distance is where he knows there's water. Or let's say it this way. The next distance is as far as people go for their needs usually. So the first distance, this first circle here, the closest circle, the smallest circle, that's the proximity of help. Then there's a greater circle outside of that one. That's the proximity of closeness. It's wider though. That's as far as people go for their needs normally. When do you have to go that far when you know there's water? Not you think there might be, you know there is. So then you have to go fetch it. And then there's the circle outside of that one, which is farness. The proximity of farness. That's where you know there's water, but it's further than where people go for their needs. Then you don't have to go there. Even if you could still catch the prayer time. So that's what that means there. Nor in the distance that one's required to go while searching for water. So that's the one who can't find water. Or the person who lacks the capacity to use water. It says in parentheses here, even though it is present. And those parentheses there, they needed to put that for the sake of the text that's being unraveled here. You do realize that when you read the bold together alone, it flows as one book. The person who cannot find water or is harmed by water makes tayammum. So they didn't see a way, they needed this verb here, is. So they put something. That's fine. So, or the person who lacks the capacity to use water, even though it's present. For example, if he needed it to drink, that's for himself or for someone else, even for his respectable animal. And his respectable animal includes the dog here, but not the pig, because he might need that dog. Then he reserves that water for drink and makes tayammum. Or harmed by using water. That's going to be either because he's sick or the water is bad. Yani, at least one of those, if not possibly both of them. Whether one feared death by using this water, the loss of his soul, or impairment of a body part, like becoming paralyzed on some part of his body, or prolonging the period of illness, for instance, even if it doesn't increase the pain. If he uses the water, he'll stay sick longer, even if it won't get stronger. Or the other way, it gets stronger, even if it won't last longer. In all the aforementioned cases, one makes tayammum. So all that explanation I just gave you here for this paragraph, that was my attempt to really stick as close to the words as I could. That's because tayammum, it's an interesting chapter. In the books of fiqh, you'll find chapter of tayammum like so small, but then the explanation of it is so big. So some other time, inshallah, unless there's something that comes in the words here, we'll try to just stick to the words here. It is a condition for the validity of one's tayammum that it be performed after the time of worship has set in. Yes. So here they put something in parentheses. Let me read it without that first. It is a condition for the validity of one's tayammum that it be performed after the time of worship has set in. Correct. That's fine. No problem here. If what's in parentheses here is not here, it's correct and fine. So, two things here. One is, for the validity of the tayammum, you have to wait for the time to come in. That means tayammum, you cannot make it ahead of time. Tayammum is not like wudu and ghusl, that you can make it ahead of time. Isn't it sunnah, for example, to make wudu and then be ready to pray before the prayer time even comes in, and then you sit and wait for the prayer time, for example, it's about to come in, then as soon as it comes in, you pray? So you cannot have tayammum ahead of time. That's one thing. And the other thing is, the way it's worded here, this is good. Before the time of what? You might say before the time of the prayer. And that wouldn't be wrong, but it wouldn't be the broadest way to say it and most encompassing and therefore better. Because prayer is not the only thing that requires purification. Other things require purification too. And you might be making tayammum for something other than prayer. So a broader word that's going to be having more implications is to say worship. So it is a condition for the validity of one's tayammum that it be performed after the time of worship, whatever worship you're making the tayammum for. So that's why this parenthesis is here. That's to clarify for you. It's like who translated this is afraid that you might think this worship here means prayer. It doesn't mean prayer only. So they put something in parentheses so you know that it's not just prayer. that one intends to perform with this tayammum, like prayer or tawaf, for example, has set in. Why you have to do it after the time came in only? Because tayammum is an emergency purification. And so you don't use it before the emergency. And if the time didn't come in, then there's no emergency. Think about it, those emergency cases in religious rules. Think about them like the axe that's in the box behind the glass. So when you're going to break the glass, just in case, not just in case, that's emergency. So don't break it unless there's an emergency. It's a taharatu darura, emergency purification. And it is also a condition for the validity of the tayammum for it to be performed after the non-exempted najis filth has been removed. Yeah. And before that. So this emergency purification, tayammum, you're not going to perform it before the time comes in. So also what? You're not going to repeat it. You're not going to refresh it, I mean. It's not like wudu. That's sunnah for you to make wudu a top wudu and to stay on wudu all the time. Tayammum is not like that. If you break your wudu, it's sunnah for you, even if you're not going to pray, to make a new wudu or do some worship other than just make wudu. It's sunnah for you to make a new wudu. But this is not the case for tayammum. But if you want to do something that requires purification, then you make the tayammum. That's the meaning of after the time came in. So if it has a particular time, then when the time comes in, so like the prayer time. Or what if it doesn't have a particular time, but it requires purification? Then that's the time. Like reciting the Quran or touching the Mus'haf. Because tayammum replaces wudu and ghusl. We didn't define it here. We should have defined it. What is tayammum in the first place? You have to know the definition of something. Tayammum is applying soil to the face and forearms. That includes the hands and fingers. With an intention, instead of making wudu or ghusl or washing an organ. That's tayammum. Applying soil to the face and hands. I'm just going to say hands, keep it easy for myself. Applying soil to the face and hands for with an intention to replace wudu or ghusl or washing an organ. Now I just said to replace. The first time I said instead of. So those mean the same thing. Now, so he says here, and it is also a condition for the validity of the tayammum for it to be performed after the non-exempted najis filth has been removed. So you have to follow that order, which is removal of filth and then tayammum from one's body. Hence, if one were to perform tayammum with the said najis on his body, his tayammum would not be valid. The tayammum would not be valid. That's different from wudu also. What if you had najasa on your body? Can you make wudu? Yes, that's valid wudu. Even if there's najasa on your body. You still have to remove the najasa before you pray though. This is true if one had water to remove the filth. Or else he performs tayammum and prays. And then makes up that prayer later on. Yani, if you want, repeats. I'm going to start making a difference here. Difference between make up and repeat. Yani, that's me. Because sometimes you miss the prayer. And then you need to pray it. So I'm going to call that a make up. Sometimes you pray the prayer. And then you have to do it again. I'm going to call that a repeat prayer. So you have qada, that's something. And you have i'adah, that's something also. Qada, make up, i'adah, but maybe they interchange them. But I'm just going to distinguish them, inshallah. And some scholars said that one's judgment is similar to the one who has no water nor soil. What's the judgment of the one who has neither water nor soil? Here, this word no here, I'd suggest putting neither instead of no. His judgment is similar to the one who has neither water nor soil. What's the judgment of the one who has neither water nor soil? His judgment is that he prays and then he repeats. Water and soil, both of those are called the two purifiers. At-tahuran, the two purifiers. So I might say in some lessons of ours, if someone lacks both purifiers, or the two purifiers, that means water and soil. I like to talk with you like that because I want to bring you closer to how the scholars really do like that. Talk. How do they talk? So you'll be familiar with that. So you can closer to it at least. Because if you don't study the Arabic, if you don't know the Arabic and then study the books of the scholars in Arabic, then there's some style they have that maybe you won't get used to it or know about it. And maybe it won't get translated sometimes. Like, just to give you an example. The two purifiers. So you should know what that means, inshallah. But maybe you won't. But if you studied fiqh, you know when they say at-tahuran. So when someone translates that for you, maybe it would say the two purifiers. Or maybe it would say, instead of saying where it's said in Arabic, if someone lacked the two purifiers, maybe you would say, if someone lacked water and soil, and then you don't see how there's a terminology there. That's like how they call Al-Bukhari and Muslim the two Shaykhs. So if you study, then you know who are the two Shaykhs, quote unquote. And then if you hear something like that and you don't know what it means, then what should you do? Ask. Say, who are the two Shaykhs? What are the two purifiers? The author says, Tayammum is performed by wiping one's face, apostrophe S here, and hands, including forearms and elbows, with the dust of unmixed, purifying, and dusty soil. This is redundant here. Maybe I should look at the Arabic there, see what's going on. Yani, with unmixed, purifying, dusty soil. This is not going to separate the dust from the soil. Tayammum is performed by wiping one's face and hands, including forearms and elbows, with unmixed, purifying, dusty soil. Unmixed means, I would say, not mixed with something granular. Granular, that means like so small, like ashes and powder. But I saw another word that was so interesting to me. Unmixed with something dissolvable. Unmixed with something dissolvable. And very interesting. Purifying soil means wasn't used before for purification, yani. Like you didn't use it for tayammum before. Or you didn't use it to clean dog najis before. Hence, using soil mixed with extraneous substances such as ashes. So here it said extraneous substance. Extraneous means outside. But what's this outside thing? How can we identify? Can we quantify it? So that's if it's granular, or like someone put it, if it's dissolvable. But still want to think about that and ask about that. Such as ashes, or using other than soil. Such as ashes, yani that's this extraneous soil. Using unmixed soil with extraneous substances such as ashes, or using other than soil like rock. That's a signal to outside of Shafi'i school. That's like saying outside what they do in other madhabs is not valid in Shafi'i school. Or using soil contaminated with an impure substance like urine is invalid. He said, does unmixed also refer to soil with stones or leaves, etc.? No, as long as it's not granular, because the soil itself is granular, right? Soil itself is grains. So you can't have something that's like grains too mixed with it, like powder or ashes. He said, what happens if you don't have soil or water again? Then you pray as you are, and then you repeat. Hence, using soil mixed with extraneous substances such as ashes, or using other than soil like rock, according to other madhabs, or using soil contaminated with an impure substance like urine is invalid. Also, tayammum must be performed in the aforementioned order. So wiping the face must precede wiping the hands and forearms. The minimum requirement for tayammum is that it is performed in 2 strikes, i.e., transferring the dust of the soil twice. Yes. So you have 2 ways you could word this. If you want to word it like the way the Prophet said it, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, then you're going to say it like it said first here. In 2 strikes, because the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, at-tayammumu darbatan. The tayammum is 2 strikes. You're going to say 2 strikes. Now, this is where the mujtahids do their jobs. So does that mean 2 strikes are a condition actually? So someone who's not a mujtahid, he might say, yeah, it says it right there. But the expert said, no, doesn't mean that. And then the other one says, so why would he say that then? So the answer is, because what's intended is 2 transfers. There's a point behind the strike. The point behind the strike is to get the soil on your hands. So it's not the strike itself that's what you really want. It's the soil on your hands. Well, how are you going to get that? Usually it's going to be because you strike the surface. But what if you got the soil on your hands from the air? Then you transferred that soil on your hands to your face. They said, this is valid too. That's valid. So then 2 strikes is not the actual condition. The actual condition is 2 transfers. So if you want to say it the way the Prophet said it, you'll say 2 strikes. And if you want to say it in some technical words by its bare minimum condition, then you could say 2 transfers of soil. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa rafa'a Allahu ta'ala al-ulama. Amin. You said, I've seen people back home where they would perform tayammum by merely wiping the side of the brick buildings and transferring that dust onto their faces and hands. Is this a method in another school? If it's valid, it's outside of Shafi'i school. So tayammum is performed in 2 strikes, i.e., transferring the dust of the soil twice. Therefore, 1 strike will not be enough. But more than 2 is permissible, but it's not sunnah. It is also a condition for the tayammum to be valid that it is performed with the intention of making the performance of the obligatory prayer permissible. So here it says the prayer, probably in the Arabic says the prayer. And some books is going to say that. So then what's the answer to that? Why say that? That's just making it simple. Simplifying for some folks like ourselves. But in particular, especially if a scholar wants to write a more advanced book and he wants to explore the levels of accuracy, then he would say it more open than that. The intention is made while transferring the dust of the soil. The intention is made while transferring, during the transfer, to the body part that will be wiped in tayammum. Yani, The intention is made while transferring the dust of the soil to the face. Here, he's got to wipe the face first. It says, though, here, to the body part that will be wiped in tayammum. Oh, then it says right there. And wiping the first part of the face. So, yes. Maybe there's something in the Arabic here. Wallahu a'lam. We'll stop there. Do you have any question I can answer for you?
My question is tayammum definition you gave, and you said which replaces wudu ghusl, and you made another statement.
Or washing an organ. Or washing an organ.
Oh, say if someone was, say, for example, in the hospital.
Yeah, or like he has a cast on, for example, or he has a severe burn.
Cast or burnt, okay.
Or he has cream on, for example, or the likes of that. He can't wash his organ.
Oh, okay.
Or he can't wash a part of his organ, even.
Because the cream might be a medication that's necessary for their health.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Or even if the cream's not there, maybe he has like really bad scrape on his arm, so he can't wash it.
Oh.
But he can wash part of his arm, but not that part. So when a person can't wash an organ or even part of an organ, then he's going to make tayammum. Doesn't be for wudu or for ghusl. So if it's his knee, if it's his knee and he needs to make wudu, then there's no tayammum here. But if it was a ghusl, then he's going to make tayammum because his knee is included there.
Understood. Okay. Good details. Barakallahu bikum.
Amin wa bikum. Alhamdulillah. So can you walk through the tayammum in practice, and how would you do it all the way through, just to understand it from end to end? Yes. Yani, a person would come to the soil, the dusty soil. He'll strike it normally. Then, because it's dusty soil, it's just going to stick to his palms. Then it's going to pick his hands up off of the surface. If there's a lot of dust on there, he can knock his hands together to get some of it off. And then when he transfers this soil, yani, that means when he brings his hands to his face, he has an intention to make prayer permissible for him. Not to lift the impurity, because tayammum does not lift the impurity. It just makes the worship permissible, whatever he's intending it for. So he makes that intention while he's bringing his hands to his face, and he has that intention while he's wiping his face too, the first part of his face. So wipes his whole face, and he doesn't have to get inside his beard. Then he strikes again, and then there's a way that they do. It takes, yani, there's a way to do it. I'm not going to try to describe it now. There's a special way you can do it, but just for me to say with easy words right now. So he strikes the second time. Now he has soil on each hand. So with the right hand, he's going to rub his left arm, all of it. And with his left hand, he's going to wipe his right arm, all of it, the forearm that is, from the elbow down to the fingertip. And then that's it. There's details about how to intend and what you can do. What can you do with a tayammum? Depends on how you intend. Now, we're not going to go into those things. We just stuck to the words of the book here. So, inshallah, if we take another book that has those details, then we'll go over them, inshallah. Amin wa fiq. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.